Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and today is episode number 6 of Witchy Things to Draw. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and make sure you have notifications turned on so you don't miss any more from this series. So let's talk about the prompts. Well, we have 2 prompts today and they are an owl and a string of tiger's eye beads. I thought I'd just start off a sketch by just drawing an owl sitting on a branch and having those tiger's eye beads draping over it. And although this is a very nice combination and format, I was thinking whilst I was drawing it that this is too easy. I can't really do anything too fancy with just having the owl on a branch, and they just didn't interact very well is perhaps what I'm trying to say. And I'm actually quite glad there is an animal in this, or a bird should I say, because it allowed me to just play around with different positions and different interactions. I thought maybe let's have a flying owl on here and have those tiger's eye beads in his beak while he's flying along. And I thought I'd try a side view because you don't really see very many side views of owls. And maybe there's a good reason for that too. It just didn't quite look right. I mean, I could have really worked, but the interaction with that owl and the beads, it just wasn't really gelling with me. It didn't really create an amazing composition, and I don't know, it didn't sit with me, but having this owl flying was a step in the right direction. I then decided to try a underview of this owl, and immediately I was a lot happier with, I guess, the silhouette it created, or the form perhaps would be a better word. Again, I had the beads hanging from this owl's mouth trailing underneath it, and I liked that level of interaction there, and I was a lot happier with the way this design was going. I thought we could have a full moon in the background, and again it would just create a really nice balance to the piece. By this point as well, I thought a square format would be nice because again the owl fits in it quite nicely. You have a nice circle from the moon which creates a nice focal point as well, and yes, I was a lot happier with how this was turning out. I did decide to have a little try with the owl holding these beads in its claws, but it just, I don't know, it altered the integrity of how I wanted this to look. It didn't really offer much in composition, and because I wanted these 2 prompts to interact with each other, having them in the claws just seemed a bit of a cop-out, and I couldn't get as much movement. So as you can see on screen now, I went for the beads in the beak, and I also added a starry frame around the edge, and I really like the composition of this. This is possibly one of my favourite ones so far. The paper I'm using is Etcher watercolour paper, and it is the cold press paper. And the pen that I'm using is a Sakura Micron. Again, I just wanted a waterproof liner just to get those lines down. Even though they're not massively going to show up with the colour scheme I decide to use here, it's just good to get those lines down first. As I was drawing this out, I knew I'd made the right decision by having the beads as they were. It just added a little bit more depth, and that's before I even had to add any of the tone or colours in here, so I knew I was in a good position with this one. I decided to ever so slightly stylise the wings. When I say ever so slightly, the whole thing's stylised, but I just used a little bit of artistic licence there to make them wings a certain shape, so I know feathers don't have square edges really. But again, I like the fact that making that adjustment just added a general overall nice shape to the whole thing. Having those round edge feathers as well really would have conflicted with the beads, so I am glad I stuck by my decision. So yes, I mentioned we're using watercolour paper, which means we are using watercolours, and the ones that I'm using today are the Paul Rubens, those glittery ones I did a little review a while back. I just thought the subtle twinkling that these paints achieve would be absolutely perfect. I used a wet and wet technique to get that background down, and I mixed a combination of the blues together. This was the first time I was using this etcher paper, and I'm not going to use this video as a review as such for it. But I have been squirreling away the watercolour paper over the past, well, since I last did a watercolour paper video, and I will be assembling them all together and putting them through their paces to do a watercolour review paper. Well, not so much a review, but I'm going to paint the same thing on lots of sheets of watercolour paper and you guys can decide what you like best. For the tiger's eye beads, I thought a yellow ochre would be a great base colour to start off with, and I didn't use a wet and wet technique for this. I just went straight in there with the paint because I just wanted a little bit more control. However, whilst that wet paint was still wet, I added the next colour in there just to add that depth. For the background, I decided to crack open my Derwent metallic paint set. And I know I could have used something that was a lot more shinier, but that was the whole point on using these Derwent ones. I used the silver one and they have a graphite coloured one in there, and I just thought those two subtle colours together would just keep in line with the level of twinkle I have going on here, but wouldn't completely dominate the page with this big shiny moon. I just didn't want that. I didn't think it would be necessary. Now it was time to start adding some of those details in there that make tiger's eyes tiger's eyes. Now I might have a little gem collection which I've just gathered over the years, and I tend to have quite a lot of tiger's eye stones, and I have several different colours as well. I really love the little streaks and lines within them and how light interacts with them. I don't know what it is, but I think they're a really beautiful little gemstone. Now it was time to get the owl painted on there, and I went for a more subtle purple colour, and I know owls aren't purple, but it's the night sky, and I thought that would make the owl stand out against the beads, and it would just overall add a nice aesthetic to the picture. I used wet and wet and just played about with the colours on the main part of the owl's body. Now I know I keep saying this, but this is one of my favourite ones so far, and I would love to hear in the comments which one your favourite one has been. I'd also like to say thank you for suggestions of medium, and I do recall somebody mentioning using some Derwent Inktense, and obviously I have the book and I've looked ahead and I have found the perfect prompt for that one, so don't forget to keep your eyes peeled for that. Now it's time to add those feather details on, and to sort of make it blend with the background but not at the same time, I went for a blue. That just brought everything all in together and again created that nice form, silhouette, general shape of the owl and how it would be the focus. I added a very subtle deeper blue in there just on the centres of the wings just to imply the feather marks. Feather marks? I mean feather ridges. You know what I mean. And I continued to just work that in ever so slightly, so it was a gentle gradient, but you could tell what they were. To add a little bit of texture and interest, I added the silver paint on the edge of the owl's wingtips, as well as adding some highlights in there on the tiger's eye beads because of those gorgeous reflections that you get. I also took this as an opportunity to just add a few spots in the sky for stars. I didn't actually want to draw physical stars on there because the corners of the piece had the stars in there, so it would just be too many and you wouldn't be able to differentiate the frame between the stars. Following on, I added some more silver paint to the edge there, and at this point my washi tape was misbehaving, which is why it started to peel. It was just annoying me in the end, so I just peeled it back a little bit. I thought this would be a good point to add in the outlines on some of the areas, and this was also after I'd painted the border on the outside of the picture. Just adding those lines in brought everything together really nicely, and we are pretty much done. Like I say, I really enjoyed painting this, and overall it's one of my favourite images. I like the very subtle sparkle from the paints and just the general composition of the piece. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear what you guys think of it in the comments, and if you are also doing this along with me. I want to say a massive thank you for watching, and there should be a few videos and lovely things to click on screen right now. In the meantime, a massive thank you for watching, and I will see you lovely lot all on the next video. Bye!